Thank you. I am so excited to be here. I am a founder here at the Rollins Center. I've been a founder for, I think they tell me, 15 years. And I am here because I love entrepreneurship. I love starting businesses. I love seeing women succeed, and you guys in here too. But I'm here. I have invited over the next, how many weeks do we have? 12? 14 weeks. Some of my very closest friends who have started amazing companies. I will be here every week to kind of draw you guys in and glean from them and learn what you can learn from their startups with companies and what they've done. To start off with, I have a few visitors. Oh, you guys raise your hand. I told you I'd embarrass you. First of my friends, Luke and Joe. They've never been to Utah before. They're from the UK. And they simply wanted to come because I said 150 girls are in this class. Sorry, there's a few guys. I didn't know there were that many guys. So meet them after. You'll love their accent. I think I heard another English accent in here too, did I? The guy that just came, okay, never mind. And also, raise your hand, Stefan. My daughter Stefan's here too. So I am excited to be here today to teach you some principles that I learned the hard way that you guys are going to learn from me. First of all, everybody should have been given a Post-it note, a sticky note, and a pretzel. Can anybody tell me what these two things have in common? Does anybody not have a Post-it note or a pretzel? Stefan, there's a few people down here. Raise your hand if you don't have a Post-it note or a pretzel, because there is something. Joe, can you guys help her maybe pass out some now you guys can check out the English guys. They're gonna kill me, aren't they? So if you don't have a pretzel or a Post-it note, grab it. But there is something these two things have in common, and the business that I started, okay? The business I started. So really quick, we'll give you a pretzel and a Post-it note. Sorry, we were trying to have them all out, but, first of all, I want you guys to look at the pretzel really carefully. Everybody stare at that pretzel in front of you. Move it around, turn it around. I want you guys to tell me how you think this pretzel was invented. So I want you to analyze for the next 20 seconds while we're handing out the pretzels and the Post-it notes how this pretzel was invented. Okay, there's two more over here, Stefan, and then I think everybody's got them. If you don't have one, it's okay, but it will help you with this little analogy. Okay, anybody have any bright ideas on how the pretzel was invented? And look at the shape. Look at the shape. That's key to how it was invented. I have a prize next week if anybody knows how the pretzel was invented. You know? Do you know, really? Okay, what's your guess? Okay, it was a mistake, but I have to tell you the coolness about the pretzel, and you guys will never forget this. It was either the 1700s or 1800s, sorry, not sure the exact date, but a monk was trying to teach the children how to pray. Look at that pretzel. Isn't that cool? So he made a soft roll in the form of a pretzel. You have to turn it, and it's the shape of kids or people folding their arms. So he baked it, and he was a little absent-minded and left it in the oven too long, and it turned hard as a rock. And he went, got him out, and he was going to throw him away, but some hungry passerbys popped one in their mouth, and they said, "These are incredible. You're on to something." That's how the pretzel was started. So when you see it, it was a monk teaching children to pray with their arms, left it in the oven too long, became an amazing treat that all Americans everywhere love. Okay, number 2, the Post-it note. Does anybody know the story behind the Post-it note? Okay, you do?
Yeah, so from my understanding, they were trying to invent a powerful glue that would, I guess be a rival to say like super glue, but they actually stumbled upon this glue that kept its adhesive nature when it was stuck against something and pulled back off. And then it became the Post-it note DuPont.
Okay, you remember me next week. I'm bringing you something, okay, and it's going to be good. You guys are going to want to listen up the next 12 weeks because I'm going to bring prizes, I think. Okay, remember, you got the first part correct, where a chemist was trying to make a super glue. It was a low-tack glue. They went 3M said, we don't want this. This is stupid. Put it in a back room. 9 years later, another chemist said, man, I'm singing in the choir, and we have a choir concert, and I can't keep track of where my music is in this book. So he used it as a bookmark and then pulled them off. In 1978, it became the hottest seller of 3M, have made billions and billions of dollars off this one invention. Guess what? You're exactly right, though, where it was meant for a super strong glue, and the low-tack glue, the adhesive, made it what it was. Okay, today I'm going to tell you about my story where everybody told me I would never make it, but I want you guys to eat your pretzel, get it out of the way, but you got to keep your Post-it note, because while I'm talking to you, every one of you need to write on that Post-it note a big idea you have. It could be as simple as opening a really cool candy shop down the road. That's not really simple. It could be starting an accounting firm. It can be anything. What is your dream? Write down your wildest dream. If you could be an entrepreneur and you had $1 million in the bank and you were told, start this tomorrow, because that big idea, we're going to come back to at the very end of the semester, okay? Yeah, okay. She's great, isn't she? All right, so let me tell you my story. This is a very old picture of my family, but this is my husband, Steve, and myself, and 5 kids. We live in Highland, Utah. This is very outdated. The oldest boy just got married a few months ago. And this is my daughter, Brecken. And I have to tell you one thing about myself. I have been an entrepreneur my entire life. I grew up right here in Orem. My parents both were professors of music here at BYU in the HVAC. I spent they worked here for 30 years. I spent many happy years down here. And during that time, I was the kid, from 8 years old, I was the kid that was dragging around a vacuum cleaner. I had a dog bathing business. I was the only person my parents knew that could grow zucchini in my backyard, zucchini squash, and sell it to the next door neighbor who was who was growing their own zucchini. I was a really good salesman. I was a good entrepreneur, and I also knew how to keep money in the bank. Okay, this is my daughter, Brecken. And this is a few years ago, and we started a business where we have a pool, a swimming pool, and my son would lifeguard at the swimming pool, charge neighborhood kids $5 for a 3-hour session. Brecken would set up a snack shack, and they both would net a bunch of money in a 3-hour period. So I have tried to pass entrepreneurship on to my own kids. So I went to BYU, got a degree in communications. Anybody here a communications major? Love it. I emphasized PR. Love the PR. Yes. I think did I talk to you last week? Maybe. It's a great major. I loved it. And during that time, I served a mission in Scotland. Anybody ever heard of Scotland? You boys back there, have you ever heard of Scotland? They're actually from England. But I served a mission in Scotland, and during that time while I was in Scotland, I had a mission president that loved publishing, and he owned a newspaper in Twilla, Utah. And so I thought, I want to do something with publications. I want to do something with writing. I knew I was a good writer. I knew I loved editing. I loved the whole printing process. So I came home and for my mission and graduated from BYU, and I had to have an internship. Who in here has to go do an internship for your major? Probably most everybody. Okay, let me give you one little piece of advice. I had the opportunity to have 2 internships. The first one was in Washington, D.C., no pay. The second one was in Idaho Falls for a company called Melaleuca, making $8 an hour. And I looked at both of them, and I thought, you know what? The Melaleuca looks good, but it doesn't look like I'm going to have as good of an internship as the free one in Washington, D.C. So when you choose an internship, choose experience over money, okay? Please don't go for, ooh, they're going to pay me X, Y, Z. Please look for the experience. I promise you'll be happier in the end. I got back from my internship, and I immediately got a job at WordPerfect. Anybody ever heard of WordPerfect in here? How have you heard of WordPerfect? Do you still use WordPerfect? You used past tense? Okay. Wow, cool. Anybody in here still use WordPerfect? It was the word processor in the day. It was bigger than Microsoft, and it was in Orem, Utah. And I had just graduated from BYU, and they offered me a job as a customer support rep. I really didn't know much about computer software. But you know what? They said, we're going to hire you for $800 a month. This was many years ago, but $800 a month. Does anybody in here think that sounds fun? $800, you do? She's saying, yeah, that sounds great right now as a student. That's pretty low pay. But yet, I thought, I'm going to get to know everything I can about WordPerfect and then go where I want to go. While I was at WordPerfect, this magazine started. It was WordPerfect magazine. And I took my experience as a customer support rep and I became the editor of this magazine. During that time, while I was the editor for that magazine for 8 years, I worked my way up. Let me turn back to that for a minute. I started out in advertising and then I went into editorial and worked my way up, loved publishing. During that time though, I had a couple of kids and I discovered I was obsessed with scrapbooking. This is a page I made. This kid right now is almost 19, getting ready for a mission. But he and his cousin were playing dentist one day and she took those big pliers and pulled his tooth out. Wiggled it and wiggled it and wiggled it till it was hanging by a thread. And that's a true story, okay? And I scrapbooked it, and I took a picture of her trying to get it out, and I'm like, are you kidding me, Mallory? And I just have to tell you, my son's reply was really cute. He said, Mom, you told me we can't play doctor, but you never said don't play dentist. And I'm like, somebody's wiggling your tooth out. And so he ended up, I think he got $7 because she had wiggled his tooth and it was hanging by a thread. This is what I became obsessed. I became obsessed with scrapbooking. This same kid here, when he was in the first grade, was getting really bad grades, really super bad grades. And he came home and he said, I'll get better grades if I can get glasses. And I said, so I took him to the doctor, and the doctor said he doesn't need glasses. So I took him home. Colin continued getting bad grades. And then a couple months later, I took him back to the doctor, and the doctor checked him again, and he sent Colin to the waiting room, and he said, you know, Mrs. Bearnson, he doesn't need glasses, but he thinks he needs glasses. Here's a fake prescription. Go buy him some glasses with fake glass. Let him pick them out. They'll put fake glass in it, and it will clear up the problem. Sure enough, we went and we tried on all these glasses. The ones on the bottom, this is what he chose, and guess what? Straight A's after that. And you know what's funny? This kid is 19, and it was only like 2 years ago I told him the truth about the glasses, and I saved him, and I said, do you remember these glasses? They were fake, and they made you so you had good grades. So if only it was so easy here in college, huh? We could put on magical glasses that would help us get good grades. During this time, I was capturing in scrapbook pages all the triumph, all the hard times, all the amazing times of my family. And sorry, I keep pointing to you guys, Luke and Joe, but last night, my 11-year-old drug her scrapbook up to show them, and they were like, wow, people really do this, and they were amazed, and they thought it was cool. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I did. I loved keeping a record of my family while I was working at WordPerfect magazine. First steps of my little one, you know, okay. So during that time, I was scrapbooking and I was publishing, but you know what my problem was? I was publishing a magazine that I wasn't passionate about. You gotta have a job you're passionate about or it becomes kind of a drag. I didn't want to look at RAM-ROM, bytes, I don't know, I don't even know what the current words all is, but I was not, I'd go to these computer software big conventions and I was a little bored. And during that time, I did a little bit of soul searching, and I love being able to tell this because we are at an LDS university. But at that time, one day, my husband had just graduated from university, and I had a really good job, and I thought I was making really good money at the time. We had several kids, but I wasn't passionate, and I thought, what am I passionate about? What would I be good at? What is that golden thing that I'm going to write on my sticky note that I want to do? And I was at the temple one day, and I was doing a little soul searching and a little bit of, you know, what do I want to do? And all of a sudden, the scripture came into mind, turn the hearts of the children to their fathers, and turn the hearts of the fathers to their children, start a scrapbook magazine. I was like, now you guys got to remember, this was in 1996. Nobody had heard of scrapbooking before. I know now everybody's like, oh yeah, scrapbooking, but literally there were only a handful of stores. There were very few products. Nobody had really heard of it. And again, the Spirit said, start a scrapbook magazine. I went home and I told my husband the idea, and I thought he was going to say, you're crazy. But you know what he did? He jumped up and down and he said, that is a great idea, Lisa. Let's do it. Now, what happens when you think of an idea? What's the first thing you want to do? Do you want to blab it to everybody? Do you want to tell everybody? You're kind of scared. Like, so this little Post-it note, you probably should kind of guard a little bit, because you're scared everybody's like the enemy a little bit, you feel like, and everybody's going to steal your idea. So at that time, we kind of researched who we'd want to be a partner of ours, and we got a graphic designer and his wife, and they came together and we said, let's start a magazine, a scrapbook magazine. And we were excited. We kept working our other jobs while we were doing this at night. And then, this is key, we went to a magazine publishing conference now by the way, you guys, remember my really low paying job at WordPerfect? I forgot to tell this. That taught me everything I needed to know about the software so I could get a good job as an editor. So if your first job, remember this tip, isn't, $100,000 a year, it's okay, because it's teaching you experience. Okay, so we went to a magazine publishing conference in Los Angeles called Folio. Okay, it was owned by Prime Media. Remember that? Prime Media, Folio. We went there and we told an expert about our idea to start a scrapbook magazine. And this is what he said. He said, there's 3 reasons why you never will make it. You will fail. The first one is it takes $1 million to start a magazine. Well, my husband and I and our partners had taken out a $100,000 mortgage on our homes, $50,000 each. We did not have $1 million to start a magazine. He said, number 2, takes a year of marketing research. He said, you guys are crazy. You need to make sure that there's a demographic that people are going to want this product, this magazine. He said, did you know that 95% of all magazines that go into business go out of business within 3 years? I want you guys to think about Barnes & Noble. There's all those magazines that you look at on the racks. 95% of those aren't going to be around in 3 years. That's the hard truth. And then he said, and I quote, scrapbooking is a really stupid subject matter because you'll get through one issue, but you will never be able to continue on with future issues of the magazine. Give up. The expert was telling us, don't do this. But I'm here to tell you guys that intuition, that gut instinct, that spirit that told me do it in this building right over here in the temple, I knew was more important than any expert. So I decided to follow my heart, follow my dreams. We all got together and said, we're going for it. That's it. So our first issue came off the press, and this is the cool part. Well, first of all, sorry, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. We didn't skimp on a mailer. We did a top-notch mailer. I guess I don't have it in here, but we did a top-notch mailer, sent it to, there were like 10 scrapbook stores. We bought their mailing list. We sent out 100,000 of these. And let me ask you guys something. Does anybody know with direct mail, what's a good percentage if you get a response back? Anybody tell me? 2%. I love it. Who said that? Good job. Yep. That's the average. 2% is kind of average, and if you get 2%, you're like, well, that was pretty good. You guys know all that junk mail you get and you kind of just dump it in the garbage? Well, that's what when people got these in the mail. Well, guess what? We got back almost a 20% response on the mailings that we sent out. That was the best marketing research we could have done, and we were glad we didn't wait a year to launch this magazine. And so here's the cool part. We printed we got close to a 20% response on the mailing lists. We had 21 prepaid ads, which is pretty unheard of. Most people say, well, we'll look at your issue for a while. We're not gonna buy it until we look at what the magazine looks like. We had 20,000 orders on our first issue, and we printed 40,000 of them, and they just flew off the shelves. This was our very first issue right here. Wow, that looks really dated, doesn't it? That was actually my hairdresser at the time. Can you believe it? So there you go, and her little boy. She became instantly famous around Utah County because everybody was getting this magazine. So, so we knew that we would succeed. That issue went like wildfire. We started in the basement of our homes, and pretty soon we moved to the top of a bank, and pretty soon we bought a building, and then we bought another building. Here's some of our issues that just kept going and going. Okay, the readership, this was a couple years ago, but the readership when I made this PowerPoint at its peak was 500,000 people across the world. 500,000, and like every continent, every country, but mostly here in America, but 500,000 readers. This is just kind of really quick. I'm going to go through it, just some fun, to show you how much we grew in a short amount of time. A full-page ad in 1996 was $2,295, and a full-page ad today is probably about 6,000. Okay, let me ask you guys a question. This is something you guys will probably never have thought of. What determines how thick a magazine is? Okay, it's the number of ads that you get, and usually it's about a 45-55% ratio. Usually there's 45% ads and about 55% editorial. That's kind of the key that people follow. Right now, if you notice, magazines are really thin, and it's because advertising's tough right now. You call it, what's the plop value? Plop. The plop value, and you take a magazine and you throw it on the ground, and if it's a loud plop, that means there's lots of ads. Okay, that's kind of a term known in the industry. We had 21 full-page ads in 1996, and the biggest we ever had was 81 full-page ads in February 2007. Okay, so the first year that we were in business, we started, the first issue came out, we borrowed $100,000. That first year, sales were at $200,000. And we were like, wow, I think we're gonna succeed. We were excited. And the cool thing is we were able to pay back those loans. We only used $40,000 of the initial money. So we were able to pay it back. If you guys can do, I personally kind of like staying away when you have a big idea from banks and from venture capitalists from the very beginning, because you kind of want to keep that money in your pocket. And I'm glad that we did that we took mortgages out on our home rather than going and finding it from a bank. Not that I'm saying they're always bad, but for us, that worked the best. Sales for CK in 2007 were 35 million. Okay, so I want you to look, in 10 years, the first year, 200,000, and then in 2007, 35 million. Now, I'm gonna tell you one thing, little mistake that we made, but it's okay along the way, and just remember that 2007, and remind me to tell you what a little bit of it was. Sales in the industry were 200 million in 1997, and the biggest it ever was 2.5 billion. You can see how this industry just exploded. What would have happened if I would have waited, if I would have not listened to the expert? That's why probably my biggest message is listen to what you think inside. If we would have listened to that expert, we never would have started it. Okay, now here's the really cool part. Let me go back to this slide. So in 2001, we sold our company, okay? Now here's what you can learn from me. We sold our company, and in 2007, 2008, I think, they resold it for many times more than, they sold it for a lot more than that, but then they paid us for it. And so we sold it too soon. You want to sell a company when it's just about ready to peak, about right here. We sold it down here. So think of your company as a big mountain you're climbing. When you think it's about ready to peak and go like this and go down, that's when you want to sell it. We sold it too soon. But we've been happy, and we did well on the sell, and we've been able to just have a very happy life for our family and those around us. So I don't regret that, but you can learn from me. You got to be really careful when you sell your company. This is how fast it grew. The first page was 68 pages. The big February 2007 was 180 pages. Scrapbook, the stores just went crazy. Okay, they just went crazy. Now I want to talk about something else. When you have your core business, there is something that you can do called ancillary products. Does anybody know what an ancillary product is? Anybody ever heard that word? Write that word down because it's an important word. Let's let this one be on a quiz. Ancillary products. Okay, you have your main product that is your cash cow. Our main product was our magazine. But there's all these other little projects that you can do that will make money for you too. Those are called ancillary products. Let me give you an example. Special issues. We every year would do a scrapbook idea book with all the extra scrapbook pages that we got in that we weren't using in the magazine. We would sell these for $14.99 a copy. The first year we sold 100,000 of them. That's called an ancillary product that's a little cash cow. You don't want something that's going to harm your main product, but something that's going to add to it. We did Hall of Fame books. We did wedding books. We did regular books. That's the first book that I did. We did Mom's Little Book of Photo Tips. Mom's Book of Displaying Children's Art. We started doing events all over the world. They still are going today. Creating Keepsakes universities, where a gal usually it was all girls and a couple of guys, could get their scrapbooking degree in 3 days. We'd have a pep rally, we'd have a commencement. It was crazy, and women took it so seriously. They were like in sororities, and it was just craziness. But that was a really good ancillary product. We still had the magazine, it was our core, but we made money off these events. Font package just for scrapbooking. All right, before I go on about telling you about some other things we did, here's some secrets to success. A strong mission statement, super, super important, okay? A strong mission, take time to create, it's just no longer than a couple of sentences, but a strong mission statement. Number 2, stay lean. In the beginning, when you start your business, you're gonna say, oh my goodness, I want to, if you come on with me, I will give you stock in the company, and I'll give you a percentage, and I'll give you this. Try the best you can. Whoops, that's my next point, is it? Wait a minute, let me look. Oh, whoops. Well, this is number 4. Don't give away stock. You absolutely want to try to pay them out of pocket. It's cheaper when you get big and you sell. Last week, who was at the luncheon last week? Amy just recently sold her company for $370 million. Now, if she would have started giving away stock in the beginning, there wouldn't have been a lot, well, there would still be a lot left for her, I guess, but she probably was really smart and guarded that as well. Number 2, we stayed lean. It's better to hire, to outsource as much as you can rather than hire people in the beginning, okay? So that means, boy, you're a graphic designer, can you do this job for me, rather than saying, can you come work for me? I promise you, it's a lot better in the end. Also, we hired a CEO. We said, you know what, I'm the very best at being the spokesperson for the company. I'm the very best at being, you know, the editor for the magazine, but I don't want to take care of the attorneys and the accounting and hiring people and you know, managing people on that level. So we hired a CEO, which was a really smart move. Didn't give stock away, I talked about that. Always put family first. I, as a woman and a mother, decided my greatest calling in life was being a mother. And I always worked from home. I always made it work. During these Creating Keepsakes years, I would sometimes get up at the crack of dawn, my kids then would get up, and while they were at school, I would work, but I always had an open door policy. I loved working at home because my kids were really who I was working for. Okay, so it just worked. I went for the free PR. Okay, if you guys are a PR major, you'll love this part because we got in every newspaper across the country. We were in the Wall Street Journal, we were in the LA Times, we were in every newspaper when we launched, and they continue. I have a stack this big of newspapers. People are looking for free PR. We were on in magazines all over. This one, BYU Magazine, you guys seen that one? They did one called Sailing on Trade Winds about our company. Utah Valley Magazine, that was a fun one I was in, showcasing my room and my business. Business Q Magazine. There's my room again. Okay, this one's kind of fun because People Magazine came to me and said, we really, really want you to do a feature on you in our magazine. And so they came to my home in Utah, here in Utah, and did an interview and took my picture. And then I was just going, please let it be a good cover. Please let it be a good cover. Well, the day before it came out, they called me and said, you're going to be in tomorrow's issue. So I went to the newsstand and I'm like, I wanted it to be a good cover. It's the Osbournes. But guess what? Everybody was buying it because they're the wackiest family in the world, and so it ended up being really, really great publicity. This was free. Magazines don't pay you to have an article in there. They actually come to you and say, we like your business, you know, will you be in our magazine? So free PR really works. There was the clip inside, the snippet. Local stations. Every local station, Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 5, they love people like you that have a big idea to come in the mornings. The morning show, I went many times at 5 and 6 in the morning doing little segments about my product. National stations. I was on the Today Show 3 times with the book, Mom's Little Book of Photo Tips. This was my favorite anchor there. His name was David Bloom, and many of you might recognize him. He died in Iraq as a news reporter, national news reporter, several years ago. Another cool thing that happened is somebody really big saw People Magazine and saw my picture, and her producer called me and said, hey, will you come be on my show? So I was able to be on Oprah. Now, I just really quickly have to just tell you guys this funny thing because we have a few guys in here, so you guys will think this is funny. How many of, all of you guys have probably heard of Lake Powell. It is just this, who's been to Lake Powell? Okay, so my husband was dying to go down to Lake Powell, finally got a timeshare on a boat, and we get all the way, we're driving down to Lake Powell. We've invited 2 families. It's a big production. We're gonna be there a week. The first day we get on Lake Powell, we're in the middle of the water, and all of a sudden my phone just magically rang. I don't usually have cell service there. And it was a lady that said, I'm Oprah's producer. We saw you in People magazine. We would like you to come and be on a segment called Ordinary People with an Extraordinary Idea. And I was looking at my husband who just got down there and his dream after years and years and years had come true. We had a houseboat and we had 2 families, and I'm like, can I call you back? So I got off the phone and I said, my husband said, who was that? And I said, that was Oprah's producer, and she wants me to be on the show next week. And he's like, and they're gonna come to our house in Utah, their team, on Monday morning. This was a Friday. And he looked at me and he's like, well, how can you choose Oprah over Lake Powell? And I'm like, it's Oprah, how could I not, you know? And so he's like, I just don't know, you know, and he was just like kind of shocked that I was even thinking about it. And then he's like, well, you know what, if it's important to you, it's important to us, you go home and do that. So the night before I was going home early, I get a call from the producer again who said, there's a mistake. We don't just need you home, we need your whole family home because we want to do a documentary on you and your whole family has to be in it. And I looked at my husband and I'm like, it's not just me that needs to be home from Lake Powell, it's the whole family. And he was a really good sport and said, whatever's important to you is important to us, and we can see why Oprah is important. So Sunday night, we drove home like madmen. They came at 7 o'clock in the morning, did a 5-hour shoot with our family, and then my husband got in the car with all the kids and zoomed back to Lake Powell, which is like a 6-hour drive from here, 5 hour, 6-hour drive, and I flew on and was on the show on Oprah. Everybody always asks me, is she as nice in person as she appears to be on TV? Absolutely yes. Was it a great PR move for our company? Absolutely yes. People were just watching that segment. Our hits on our website went through the roof. Our products just escalated. It was great. So it started though, it didn't start with Oprah. It started with local stations, newspapers, People magazine, Today's Show, and then Oprah. So that's kind of how it works. You have to start with the basics, and a lot of times that's the local stuff. Another thing that was huge for me, how many of you guys have heard of QVC? Okay, that's a home shopping network that probably you guys pass over and go, oh, my wife doesn't need any of that, or I don't need any of that, or whatever. But I was on that for 12 years, and I had to sell $8,000 a minute minimum during prime time. And I was on for hours and hours at a time. It was back in Philadelphia. And I had a monthly show and would be on for several hours. This was probably the most successful product I ever did there. This was a book that I did, and I had a CD in it and a little scrapbook. I sold 80,000 of them in a day. Okay, so what I did, and this was free to be on QVC. I would represent people's products. I would represent my own, but the PR went through the roof for the magazine. Okay, because this it was a cash cow because we'd get money for everything that I sold. Okay, so I did that for 12 years. We also launched simple scrapbooks. I'll go over this really quick. Paper crafts, digital scrapbooking. I just want to go over with you secrets of having a successful career and being a successful mother. Number one, you have to set your limits. Okay, and guys, write this down too, because if your wives work, or this is good advice for you all too, you need to set your limits. I know people that start their own companies, they're 24/7 thinking about it and doing it around their families, around the dinner table. I decided, you know what, when I'm with my family, I'm all family. I'm not going to talk about the latest scrapbook page or the latest business venture or my next trip. I'm setting my limits, and I'm going to set my limits when I'll be in that office, because you can be in there all the time when you have your own business. Number two, include your spouse in the decisions. Promise you, that's key. If you're starting your own business and keeping it to yourself, your spouse feels a little bit out in the dark, and if you share with it, it makes a happier marriage, and it makes things go a lot smoother with the business. Number three, put your family first all the time. There's a field trip you want to go on, or a business meeting, say, sorry, I'm going on the field trip, and make something happen. I love this quote, no success can compensate for failure in the home. Work for home, I talked about that a minute ago, as much as you can, especially you women. Get help in your home. I had a nanny for many years, and she did all the things I wished I could do, like, you know, clean bathrooms and make dinner. I'm joking, but she helped me a lot. But the things that were hands-on with the kids were more me. Rely on divine intervention. I talked about those feelings I had at the temple that day telling me to start a scrapbook magazine, and I'm glad, we are lucky that we know what divine intervention is. We know about prayer. We know about personal revelation. Rely on it. It's a resource. It's the most powerful resource that you could ever have. Okay, I don't think we have time for this next section, but my next move, let me tell you guys about my next move. 3 years ago, I retired from the company, and I've been extremely happy as a mother and a wife and taking care of my little flock of sheep. But I recently, the competitor of QVC came to me and said, we really want you to start a show, and we're going to make it really great for you. It's down in Florida. And so I think I'm going to have to let you guys stay tuned, because I'm going to see you every week for the next 12, 16 weeks. Maybe it's 12. Is it 12 weeks? Yes. I'll have to tell you about my new gig. But the good thing is you can take some time off. When you've started your own company, you're still marketable. And there's still people wanting you to do things, but you get to choose, pick and choose what you want to do. So I think I'm going to start another television show next March at a competitor of QVC. So still to be decided, but that's my next big thing. Does anybody have any questions for me in the next couple of minutes? Did everybody write down their big idea? Okay, here's what you need to do. You need to write down the big idea. You need to go home and you need to put it in a journal. You need to put it in a scrapbook, put it on your fridge, put it on I don't care where you stick it. And when you look at that big idea, I want you to think about my story. I had an expert, oh, I forgot to tell you this part. When we sold our company, it was bought by a company called Prime Media. They were the people that told us we never would make it at that very first publishing conference in Los Angeles. And I would always rub it in their face saying, you never thought we made it and you just bought us. So I want you guys to be able to look at that Post-it and remember that sticky note. Remember that it was a mistake and how much money they've made off it. Remember when you see a pretzel, that was a mistake. Look what an amazing invention that is. And I, again, am one telling you girls, you can have your cake and you can eat it too. You can have a family, you can have a career. There's ways you can juggle it if you have the passion, if you have the drive. Because I've done it. I've done it for 25 years now since I graduated from here, and it's been an amazing ride. Any questions? Okay, next week, she showed you who's going to be here next. Does this get over it? 20 after, okay. Next week, I kind of want to tell you guys, can I tell them the lineup a little bit of who's coming? Okay, next week is a company called Jewel Cade. I have one of her necklaces on, and she will tell you her story, but I love that she just had a little boutique in her basement, and this thing has exploded. And guess what? It is now a catalog business. It's a home marketing business that has just exploded around the United States. You guys will absolutely love her story. We also have a company called K9 Designs coming. Love them. They're a mobile dog groomer, and this gal started it and her husband helps her. But they're not only mobile dog grooming, they have branched out. They have ancillary products, remember that word, that have made them really successful. Hillary Weeks, do you guys know Hillary Weeks? She's a famous singer in the LDS market. She's coming to speak to us, but she's not only going to tell us about how she made it with her music, but her next big idea that really has nothing to do with music, but how she's capitalized on the music to create that. We have Jeanette Bennett. She's the creator behind Utah Valley Magazine coming. We have accounting firm, somebody that started a very successful accounting firm. We have a really good mix between just all kinds of fun things you can think of, and every one of them wildly successful. So I think you guys are in for quite a treat the next 2 weeks. Does anybody have any questions for either one of us before we excuse you? Other things? Okay, perfect. Thank you.